Hello everybody and welcome to this new episode from Bikotic. Today we're looking at the new Giant Propel and we ask the question, is it actually an aero bike? Arriba! This episode is brought to you entirely from the Bikotic.com website where there's over 300 bikes all lined up for you to compare back to back, and over the last month or so the website has served up 30,000 pictures of bikes for people to look at, which I think is pretty good. Big shout out to everybody who has donated to support the channel. Don't forget you can make bike requests and leave me feedback. And I was sad to hear that Mike Burrows passed away last week. He was the inspiration behind the Lotus 108, which Chris Boardman famously rode to gold at the 1992 Barcelona Olympics in the 400 meters pursuit. From that bike, Lotus then went on to make the 110, which was actually available to buy. Mike Burrows also designed the original TCR way back when, and we'll be comparing the Propel to the latest TCR in a minute. And then quickly, just before we get going, a question to my international viewers not in the UK. Are you suffering from horrendous inflation at the moment? So I was on the Specialized website and noticed that the S-Works Tarmac SL7, since I loaded up the data for it in February, has gone up another 750 quid. It's now a £14,000 bike, and I'm sorry, but no bike is worth £14,000. It's madness. Even the Specialized Allez Sprint has gone up £250 since April when I loaded up the data and is now nearly £3,000. The world has gone crazy. So what with winter coming, Jon Snow, if you don't see many videos from me, you know what happened. So the Giant Propel. This is the initial 2013 offering from Giant. Rim brake, pretty snazzy, sporty looking machine. So if we fade through to the outgoing Propel, you can see that though the frame is different, they kind of stuck to the design for nearly 10 years, with the only real radical change being that we went to disc brakes. So here it is, the new 2023 Giant Propel. Beautiful looking thing. I've got no idea which way it goes, how you get in it, or how you pedal it, but it sure looks good. Or at least, this is what I was expecting the new Giant Propel to look like, but in reality, we've ended up with something very different. And if I fade through from the outgoing Propel to the new 2023, you'll see what I mean. Here it is, the new Propel. This is the SL1. If we fade back and forth, it's quite different to what I was expecting, if I'm totally honest. And in fact, if we rub out the front of the bike, you'd be forgiven for thinking that, well, it's not an aero bike. It's a lightweight climbing bike. However, before the Giant Propel was even released, Dylan managed to bag himself stage 3 in a bunch sprint of the Tour de France. And Michael Matthews managed to win an excellent stage 14 of the Tour de France in a solo breakaway on a very hilly course. So that's two very different wins straight away for the Giant Propel before it's even released. So that's a good start. So what are the differences if we fade back and forth between the old one and the new one? Well, the big obvious difference is up the front here. We've lost the mega stem, the giant stem that Giant made to hide the cables of the Propel. A stem so huge you could land a light aircraft on it. But now Giant have routed the cables down the front of the stem here in a much more conventional way, which means that we don't have to have that giant pointy stem anymore. And though I've taken the mickey out of it since it came out, I think I'm going to be quite sad to see it go, actually. No. So again, just fading between the two, we can see that we've got a bit more clearance here. And actually we've gone from 28 mils of clearance to 30 mils, so you can get slightly bigger tyres on. The top tube is very slightly sloping now, whereas it was very horizontal before. And the new Propel comes with these two specific water bottle cages, and actually they're different, all in the name of aerodynamics. If anything, the forks look a little bit slimmer maybe, but pretty similar I guess. And then if we move to the rear of the bike, the Propel has been on a massive diet. Now, interestingly, if we look at this picture here, the old Giant Propel curved round the back wheel, and then the new Propel, we've gone to just a straight seat post, moved forward so that we can have it straight without curving it. Now, bear in mind the Propel arguably is an aero bike. The outgoing Madone from Trek had a straight seat post, and in fact, in the new model, they've sculpted it round the back wheel. And if we look at a few more competitors here, the Cannondale SystemSix, Canyon Aeroad, the new Scotfoil RC, the Simplon Pride 2, and the Cervelo S5 all curve their seat tubes round the back wheel. So Giant have decided that, well, it's just as aero not to do that. Now, the new Propel was released with a PDF jam-packed full of extremely impressive numbers, but sadly I've forgotten all of them. Needless to say, it's very slippery, it's super light, it's more comfy, and it's a real stiffy. So yay to that. But the burning question I wanted to answer with this video is the new Giant Propel an aero bike? Well, this here is the SL0, and if we fade that through to the Cervelo S5, which very much is an aero bike, then you'd have to say that the Propel falls much more into the lightweight all-round sort of race bike and isn't necessarily an aero bike, even though in the database I have listed it as an aero bike because that's what the Propel has always been. So does that mean that the new Giant Propel is a TCR killer? Is the current TCR Advanced SL Disc 0? And if we fade between the two, I unfortunately don't have a weight for the TCR, but one of the magazines weighed this SL0 and it came in at 6.79 kilograms. So it is actually pretty light, and it does have aero features. So if I was a racer, why would I pick the TCR over the Propel? That's the question. So what do you think? Put a comment in down below. Do we still need the TCR? So is Giant going to go the same way as Specialized and phase out one of their race bikes in favour of one bike that does everything? Because as we all know, the SL7 Tarmac phased out the Venge. Could the same thing be happening over at Giant? Hopefully not. So if we come in here to the bike finder, select Aero, I've actually got 66 bikes in the Aero category. And if we sort by lightest, get the bikes, what we can actually see here is the new Propel is actually sitting in second place at 6.79 kilograms. Trumped only by the 2019 Felt AR FRD, but that was a rim brake bike. And the Propel is actually trumping the old 2016 Aeroad, which some might argue is the best road race bike ever made. No prices out yet for the new Propel, so can't really comment on that. And I've only got the 105 version of the Trek Madone in the database because Trek haven't put any side views of the other versions of the Madone on their website. But this version is coming in at 7.75 kilograms. And even with the Dura-Race group set on it, I can't imagine it being as light as this Giant Propel. Now, if we just search for the Propel in the database and we'll sort by newest, then we'll see we get 4 versions of the new Giant Propel, and the 2 we've just looked at are both the SL versions that come with the ISP integrated seat post, and then there will be other versions that come with a normal seat post that is adjustable. And if we have a look between the SL version and the Advanced 2, you can see the differences there. Normal seat post that you can adjust, and a seat post that you have to cut, and then I think you can put some spaces in here to slightly adjust the height, but you are going to have to cut your seat post in the right place, don't get it wrong. But apart from that, they look pretty similar. Obviously the seat post there gets a bit wider so that you can fit the seat post in it. Something I forgot to mention is on the old Propel we had a deeper section at the back and a shallower section at the front. On the new version we've just got the CADEX 50s on there. So we've done away with that idea. Speaking of the CADEX 50 Ultras, look at the spokes on there. Carbon bladed aero spokes. They are super fat. So what do we think of this paint scheme? Well, for me personally, it's okay. It's a heck of a lot better than the 2018 version of the Giant Propel, which really was quite revolting. In fact, so revolting that one of my earliest videos was me repainting it in the Golf racing colours. Yeah, I think that still looks pretty good. So what about if we compare it to the Canyon Aeroad? Actually not a million miles off at the front, and in fact this shape here is actually very similar. If I fade halfway through and then move the Propel to match that on the Aeroad, remarkably similar shape there, isn't it? The Propel is actually slightly less deep on the head tube than the Aeroad, but clearly at the back end it's a very different story. The Aeroad has got much thicker profile to it. What about the new Trek Madone? Let's fade back and forwards between those two. And actually the Trek Madone is a lot deeper on the head tube. Look at that. And again at the back, We've got much deeper profiles curved around the back wheel. And we've got the radical new Madone cutout. So very different there between those two bikes. In fact, some might argue that the new Propel is actually more like the Trek Emonda. More of a lightweight all-round race bike. And if we compare it to the new Scott Foil RC, yeah, not many similarities there. And then what about the Merida Reacto? Well, again, you would maybe argue that it's closer to the Scultura. I think there are more synergies there between the Propel and the Scultura. I like that bike. Well, it really couldn't get much more different, could it? The back end on this bike is like a billboard. It's huge and very different to the Propel. Clearly Cannondale and Giant having some very different ideas there about what an AERO bike should look like. So what do I think? What do I think of the new Giant Propel? I like it. For me and where I live, it's a much more realistic proposition to buy this, or a version of this, than say a full-blown AERO bike. I live in a very hilly area, so I'm always going to want that more sort of lightweight with a bit of aero type bike. So yeah, I would have always bought the TCR over the Propel before. Now I think I probably would be swung towards the Propel. I'll be interested to see what the pricing is like. And really the only thing for me is I wish the paint jobs were just a little bit more racy, not into this sparkly stuff. So there we go. Comment down below, let me know what you think. Do you like the new Giant Propel? Are you going to buy one? And if you like this video, give it a big thumbs up. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. Go and check out Bikotic.com. Until next time.